This video will be a full guide to Unreal Engine's mobile input. Unreal Engine is unfortunately not very good for mobile games, so there is limited information and documentation on the subject, so everything in this video will be the stuff I've learned myself. I have released a mobile game myself, so it's doable, but not perfect. So let's get started. Go to Project Settings and find Input. The first thing we need to do is to make sure we can see the mobile input at all times. Select Always Show Touch Interface. Make sure to select the default joysticks, as this will be the one we will tweak today, but you can also create a new one. In the search bar, type in Touch. Make sure the Use Mouse for Touch is selected, so we can test our controls without having to export it to a phone first. Now the mobile input should be visible in your game, so I will add a jump button. Press the Browse button. Now you'll see all these textures and interfaces. This is located in the Engine folder, so it's not actually located in your project. Open it up. In here you will see a bunch of settings, and also 2 array elements with 9 members. The element is essentially a button, or joystick. So if you want more buttons, you can add them, or if you want less, you remove. If you regret deleting a button, you can always press Ctrl-Z like any other mistake you make. Since I don't want to have the right joystick in my game, I will remove it and add a jump button. So there are 2 images here. Image 2 is what we use for normal buttons. Image 1 is for joysticks. So if I change Image 1 here, you will see what I mean. So only use Image 1 if you are making a joystick. You will see that there is a lot of stuff in here. Let's first fix our jump button texture. You can use a default texture from Unreal Engine or import your own texture. The center is essentially where your button should be located on screen. X and Y. The visual size panel means how big you want your button to look in-game. The thumb size is only used for joysticks and essentially means how big the circle is going to be, or the stick. The interaction size is how big the pressable area should be in order for your button to be pressed. Input scale is not important, just keep it at 1. And then there are 2 keys here, being the main input and alt input. The alt input is used for joysticks so that the character can move up and down and left and right. For a button, we only need the main input key. The rest of the settings are for the movement of the button. So active opacity means how visible you want the button to be when using it. Inactive means the opposite, how visible you want it to be when you're not using it. Time until deactive means how long you want to wait before the button becomes inactive. When you press the button, it will move on the screen. After a certain time, it will recenter. Time until reset means how long you have to wait in order for that to happen. Activation delay means how long you have to press the button in order for it to be activated. The widget buttons will by default move location when you press around it. To prevent this, there is an option called Prevent Recenter. And finally, startup delay means whether you want it to take some time before the virtual joystick is drawn. That's really all there is for the mobile input settings. Now let's add some functionality. In my template, by default, the spacebar will make the character jump. So all I have to do is set the main input key to the spacebar, and the button will do what the space button is connected to. I will now import a custom texture into the engine and use this instead. Depending on what texture you use, the visual size may be bigger or smaller. So now you know how to make a jump button. This should be enough for you to be able to make single action buttons. But what if you want to create a shoot button, a button that you have to hold in order to function? You can either create a new button or duplicate the existing button. Change the image and set the keyboard key. Select any keyboard button that isn't already in use and create a shoot event. The shoot event will be activated when we press the G button or the new mobile button that we have created. This video is not meant to be code specific, but I will show you a basic way you can do this. So I have selected the G button. We need to make sure that when we press the shoot button, an event is called until we release the button. Create a variable and give it a name. Set this to true when pressed and false when released. After spawning in your projectile, put a delay node and a branch that checks whether the shooting variable is true or false. If it is true, we will keep shooting. Now you'll see that the button works, but it's spawning in way more projectiles than one. That's because this event is being called every time we press the button. So instead of doing it once, it does it 3, maybe 4 times. In order to prevent this, use the do once node and make sure that it gets reset when we release the shoot button. Now it works splendid. Now you know how to create a mobile input system using Unreal's mobile input, but there are some limitations. For instance, what if you wanted to customize your buttons and make them better visually? There's no way to do it using the mobile input, unless you're willing to use C++, but there is a way to do it using a widget. Create a new widget and give it a name. Add a canvas panel and a button. Set up the size of your button and the location. Stylize the button however you'd like. I will make it darken after it's being pressed to give the player a feeling of it being pressed. Also, we have to add the widget to the game. Now we have to create a jump custom event and link it to the widget button. We will have to cast to the character and call the custom event, which has to be linked to the jump event. Now it looks better. Widgets are easier to use and more customizable, but unfortunately they also have their limitations. If you want to have a joystick and use a widget like I'm doing here, we're limited to single button presses. So if you wanted to have a shoot button and to hold the button in while using the joystick, it wouldn't work with a widget. So you would either have to use a widget and the mobile input system together, or not customize the shoot button. Let's say you wanted to change the interface in-game. Maybe you have 2 playable characters. How could you accomplish this? Create a new interface and set the buttons and settings as you wish. There is a node called Activate Touch Interface. Connect this to the player controller and it should work. Make sure to select the other interface in the node. So there you have it, Unreal Engine's ways of creating mobile input. Unfortunately, it's not perfect, but you can make it work somehow.